Hi everyone, I'm Michael Gold, EIU editor and research lead for Pride and Prejudice, the Economist's flagship LGBT rights initiative. Pride and Prejudice is a global event held over 3 cities, Hong Kong, London, and New York, and it also includes extensive research into global views and attitudes surrounding LGBT diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Thank you for joining our very first Facebook Live chat on this topic, and I'm happy here to have Alfred Chan, chairperson of Hong Kong's Equal Opportunities Commission, joining me in the Economist Group's Hong Kong office to discuss both our research findings as well as how they relate to the work of the EOC. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor Chan.
My pleasure.
So, Professor Chan, the EOC was established in 1996 as Hong Kong's main arm for combating discrimination in various areas of society, including employment and the workplace, of course. Can you describe just a bit about the EOC's mission and what it specifically does for LGBT people?
Right, simply, EOC is tasked to eliminate, if possible, all discrimination, in particular related to the 4 sets of legislation we are responsible for, i.e. Gender, race, disability, and family status.
And what specific measures has the EOC done to promote LGBT diversity and inclusion?
LGBT diversity actually is quite new to Hong Kong, but new doesn't mean that EOC is not paying significant attention to it. In fact, EOC has contributed significantly for past years, including that we are holding different forums and discussions, seminars with the public so that they could be make more aware of the issues, as well that we commission studies so that we would land on more so-called evidence-based policy practices, so that also we could use that to advise government, to what sort of policy they should make in welcoming, the diversity in Hong Kong. Now, apart from that, obviously, EOC is also a body tasked to take on complaints against discrimination. So, if there are any cases of discrimination, we will pursue for the victim, all the way to the court if that's needed.
So, can you explain a little bit about the status of anti-discrimination legislation toward LGBT people in Hong Kong and what the EOC is doing to help promote that?
Now, unfortunately, Hong Kong has not a distinctive legislation in what we call sexual orientation and sexual identity yet. And therefore, we leverage on the disability ordinance for the transgender people, and during the process of transforming themselves into a different sex, they are protected under the disability discriminatory legislation. But apart from that, I'm afraid that Hong Kong still yet has a lot of room to improve in that aspect.
But what are the sort of general trends that you're seeing in attitudes towards LGBT people, both in Hong Kong and perhaps maybe in Asian society more broadly?
Right. Let me first of all say that Hong Kong is relatively open and open to the globe, and therefore, we found, perhaps quite understandably, the older generation is still a bit reserved, on the issue. But when we're looking at young people, from 18 years old upwards to above 40 years old, they are very receptive and accepting to the issue. By that, I don't mean they are gay or lesbian. In fact, they are very open that they would welcome friends from all sorts of orientations, including being gay and being lesbian.
So this sort of ties into some of the research that we did, because as part of that we conducted a global survey of business executives regarding their attitudes towards LGBT diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So among those results, there are some significant findings about younger workers, such that they are, say, 8% percentage points more likely than older workers to believe there is a return on investment or business opportunity in enacting LGBT-friendly workplace policies and practices. So what is your view on this, and are you seeing this also in the business community here in Hong Kong?
Well, I see, in fact, our business community is much more open to the kind of diversity inclusion idea. For one thing, that Hong Kong being as a tradition, a pragmatic business platform, business people are much more accepting, to those people coming into Hong Kong as well. That let me quote one phrase that top businessman said to me. He said, if you can pay the money, regardless of the color or age, so why we should bother? So as long as we are doing good business. So I think that tells people that how inclusive Hong Kong business community might be. So therefore, I for one would take our business community is very open to all sort of ideas.
Mm-hmm. And what about, in particular, the role of young people in the business community? Do you think that they're driving more of this openness?
Young people is very important. They are our next generation, of course. And in one of our commission study, it says that over 90% of the young people, they are much more accepting when compared to the older generation, to LGBTI and people, with minority people with sexual orientations. So with that, I think I can assure you and other people that Hong Kong will definitely be much more inclusive than what we are now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, I'd like to quote from another study that was commissioned by the EEOC, Hong Kong Public and LGBT People's Attitudes Towards LGBT-Friendly Business Organizations. So there are some very positive findings in that study. So among those aged 18 to 34, they were more likely to have a positive or very positive view toward a business organization that provides benefits to same-sex partners, sponsors a pride parade, or openly supports anti-discrimination legislation on the grounds of sexual orientation. So given all this, how come businesses aren't actually doing more of that? How come there aren't more local businesses that are sort of stepping forward to take these actions?
Right. I mean, having said that, in general, I think younger people are much more open than the older generation. Our business community still, quite a few of them are still considered to be, traditional and from running family businesses, and therefore you might not be able to see the, overwhelming acceptance in, diversity inclusion. But I can assure you, in fact, in 5 to 10 years' time, I think when the younger generation beginning to surface, the attitude towards the LGBTI community would be much more welcoming. In particular, I think we are now experiencing what business community call brain drain. We are dying for more talents, and of course, where could we find talents? And they are from everywhere, including the LGBTI community.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think that sort of among the business leadership community in Hong Kong, that they recognize that this shift is coming, and that the war for talent requires a more diverse and inclusive mindset?
Oh, definitely. I think we have very close connection with business community, and for the more traditional kind of business running, let me quote an example. People organizing elderly homes, for example, right? They are very local, and they are very traditional. But even those operators told me that if they have LGBTI community coming to use their services, i.e., becoming one of the residents, they definitely would welcome them with open arms. So that tells you that actually, because of business is open as usual, and regardless people's orientation, Hong Kong people definitely, I think, in time would welcome all kinds of people.
Mm-hmm. Now, maybe I can just sort of go back to some of the findings from our survey that showed that many business executives, many respondents in our survey will look to the company leaders to guide thinking in the company around LGBT diversity, and yet when they're asked who is more eager to support LGBT diversity, leadership is not ranked very high.
Right.
So why do you think this is, and what do you think can be done to engage more leaders to be more forceful advocates for LGBT diversity?
Well, first of all, I think, as I said, there are still quite a few family businesses in Hong Kong, and it is those family businesses we need to make aware of, this kind of new trend. To do that, I would encourage young people too, not to wait for their bosses, but also, actually make that a condition for the employment to their bosses. Whether one is gay or lesbian doesn't really matter. But what one wants is really a diversity inclusion community. So when one is placed in a work setting, I or anyone would want, to be welcome, not just for me, but for everyone. Then obviously we would have a very harmonious environment. And Chinese, for one, obviously would definitely treasure harmony and friendship, and that obviously would yield high productivity at the end. And bosses would definitely smile towards that.
Now, Hong Kong obviously has many foreign businesses here, American businesses, British businesses, businesses from all over the world. It's a global watering hole for the international community. What do you think that role is? Because it seems like a lot of the movement in raising LGBTI diversity in the workplace does come from the global business community. Do you think that there could be more of a two-way street?
Oh, definitely. I think global companies could be, first of all, a demonstrator to local companies that, if they want real talent, they should actually, have a company culture which is open and, diversity inclusive. And secondly, those companies that definitely would be a good demonstrator for making profits, while at the same time, making their workforce much more diversified.
Obviously there's also a number of different industries in Hong Kong, and some of these industries have a sort of a better track record than others. So, for example, creative industries might be seen as more open, financial services are often considered more open. What is your view on this, and how do you think that those kinds of industries that are more open can engage in dialogue with those that are seen as being maybe more conservative?
Those what you call creative industries or entertainment industry in particular, they are more open to the rest of the world, and therefore they are easily come into contact with the rest of the world, and therefore they are more sensitive. And obviously this could be a vehicle to bring back those ideas or philosophies back to Hong Kong and try to influence the other more traditional companies. And I can see this happening amongst local companies as well. In particular, when EEOC is doing workshops on LGBTI issues. In fact, many global companies are dovetail their local partners to come. So we are very happy to see that.
So you're seeing this maybe even more among sort of some of the more like manufacturing or textile companies that are considered maybe more family-owned or more traditional.
Definitely.
Good. Interesting. So one of the last aspects of our survey that I'd like to discuss with you is the role of women in affecting change for LGBT diversity in the workplace.
Right.
Now, at first blush, this may not seem like a natural comparison, but just in our survey results, we found a number of interesting findings about the role of women in the workplace. So among our female respondents, they show a much higher willingness to support LGBT issues in a variety of contexts than the male respondents. So for example, Share, who identify themselves as very comfortable working with an LGBT person, women are about 10 percentage points higher than men to say they are, or on various statements such as corporate silence on LGBT inclusion is no longer acceptable, and I would prefer to work for a company which is an advocate for LGBT D&I. You just see a consistent gap.
Sure.
So what is your view on that, and what is the sort of the Hong Kong perspective?
Well, that seems to be so natural to me, for Asian women in particular. Now, without making our Asian ladies too stereotypical, now the Asian ladies tend to be mother-like, much more mother-like, towards others. And first of all, women give birth to their child or children, and therefore, they tend to show much more affections towards others, and obviously, they are prepared, at least for the younger generation here in Hong Kong. Those I met, they already prepare themselves psychologically that if I were having a child growing up to be a lesbian or gay, I would definitely take them as my child. Nothing will change because he or she is my child. So I think it's that sort of a loving attitude that dictates our ladies having that more inclusive or more accepting attitude. For men, obviously, I think there is also a psychological reason too. Men, Asian men in particular, they are very competitive in their nature, so they want to win, and because of that, obviously, they are more abrasive. And talking about loving, the others and give love thy children would be less ready, compared to our ladies.
Interesting. So, are you seeing this kind of translate into the business world as women gain more stature, especially in the Hong Kong business community? Do you think that this has implications for the LGBT community in the business world too?
It certainly does. What I see is, when women are beginning to climb up to high positions, they will become much more inclusive. They will be much ready to accept, their subordinates as having all kind of orientations, including sexual orientations. So I see a lot more diversity inclusive practices in the future if ladies are becoming our rulers.
Professor Chan, thank you very much for joining me today, and thank you all for tuning in. Please leave comments on our Facebook page and click like, and hopefully I'll see you again all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.